Hi, John, and it's great to have you on this podcast. I'm just wondering, while we kick off, could you possibly give me a quick overview of your career journey and how you got into field service leadership?
Well, I actually started off as a professional DJ years ago, and then radio personality. And then I converted over to business. And the reason I bring this up is it actually helps me a lot as I lead organizations from a business, or I would say corporate perspective. Started off with Hewlett Packard, moved to Agilent, which is a spinoff. I was the IT manager there, left there and went to a company called Given Imaging out of Israel. That was a phenomenal opportunity. There is where I really picked up having field services. We had a hub, but then we expanded to field service. I actually went out into the field, talked to customers, and got, I would say, boots on the ground types of feedback, so I could take that back to the organization. And we actually changed the organization, our field service, to meet the needs of the customer. From that, we were acquired, and I became part of Medtronic. And Medtronic, I was the GI Global Service Director. So teams all over the world. We expanded the field service within the United States. And now I'm with W&H North America, where we've implemented field services this year, and we'll be expanding it throughout the rest of this year going into uh, 2026. Background really has been within the IT medical device environment, and then utilizing a field service to meet the needs of those specific business sectors.
Quite a global background.
Yeah, a little bit.
So in terms of your journey, have there been a few challenges you've had to overcome?
I think the biggest challenge is change. The customer need is never really off of, I would say, out of the parameters of how we work. It is conditions associated with it that create the challenges. So we talk about technological challenges, the way we communicate, and that starts to create higher expectations for customers. We do FaceTime now. Everything is very visual due to our new digital age. So customers are looking for, quick, fast, in a hurry, fix it immediately. And so has always been a challenge of how do we continue getting organizations to adjust to the conditions of technology and meet customer expectations at the same time. And in some cases, try to be, I would say, ahead of the game. So as we're getting people with the mindset of being, more proactive than reactive. And that becomes a cultural shift that takes time for not just the organization, but for leaders. So that's always the challenge. It still is a challenge, and it will be a challenge for me.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's sort of the new generation is about a right now, immediately kind of need the information now. I need someone now. And it's
Yes.
definitely, their expectations have definitely changed a lot. Just going back to your career, John, is there anyone that's been a kind of good mentor to you, or have you ever picked up any sort of snippets of information that have lasted with you throughout your career?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I have three, I would say, I would call them the change agents in my life, right? They were my mentors, or they identified something that made me change my way of working, also my career path. The first person, and I actually stay in contact with her at least, once or twice a year. Her name is Rosie Williamson. She was a manager who sat down and told me that I had more skill sets that would benefit me in my career if I actually used them. And so I was at that time coming out of being, on radio. So I was just more or less process driven and just, and the task. So do the task, I'll complete the task, I'll exceed what your expectations are. But she saw that I'd had leadership in my past, how the team kind of rallied around me. I was a new person on the block, so to speak. And she just told me, you're really wasting your time doing what you're doing with my organization. You need to really expand. So that advice actually changed my trajectory, opened up my eyes to getting back into leadership, because I did that, in college and some of my other jobs. And in doing so, it opened the door for me moving into IT, and then really, to where my career is currently. The second person, his name is Jeff Seaver. He was my manager with Hewlett Packard. He believed in me when I would come up with I thought were crazy ideas, and he would say, "Let's give it a try." He never said no. And so when you're in an environment, when you have someone, a leader that promotes creativity, it really helps you to, you feel like you can do anything and you can see how you can achieve, but you also have the backing of a senior leader. It just makes that path so much clearer. And it also gives you the desire to do more because they're taking away the limitations. And lastly, the person's name is still, I have not been in contact with him in years. His name is Rich Kellen. Rich Kellen and I worked together at Agilent. And at Agilent, we had a mishap where our process did not complete as it should have. The person who was doing the work had left the company, so someone else took on the role. We missed one step and it cost a lot of money. It was not booked for that particular quarter. And Rich, instead of just coming down on me and the team, he said, "Come on, let's sit down. Let's look at what happened. Let's sit down and kind of write a narrative about what occurred." And when we took this to senior leadership, he basically said, "It's my team. I own it." And we made the mistake was made, but people were trying to do the right thing. They were covering for a gap. And I found in that leadership that no matter how bad things are, a true leader will make sure that they take care of their organization, their people. And in doing so, people will want to do more for that leader. So I've never forgotten that because that could have been the most devastating day of my career at that point. And I would always have to, think back on that, where it gave me insight on every problem can be solved, no matter how bad it looks currently. Do a deep dive of what the root cause is and see if we can come up with a solution, provide the solution, but stand by your team. And so those three individuals have really enabled me to be as successful as I've been over the decades. Also with my leadership philosophy, how I look at people, treat people, helps me globally with the different cultures. So those three are key in how I've gotten to where I am today.
I always find this part of the kind of discussion the most interesting, actually, in terms of how people have ended up where they are. It's always fascinating to know that everyone always relates to a few people or a few individuals or a few kind of things that have had a real impact on them. Moving forward, in terms of, you talked a bit about technology and always been in technology. Is there any sort of emerging technologies that you're excited about in terms of field service and the medical device industry in particular?
You know, the thrilling topic and the fearful topic is AI. For field service, AI provides tools that I believe will help the technicians be more effective and efficient, even from a documentation perspective. If you're training someone and using AI tools that will help to bridge the gap of what they know to what they need to know, and also how they can refer to information, also how it's documented. Using AI tools to document the activities and house that data, I believe really is going to be great for field service. There is also in the background a lot of people talking about predictive analytics. We're using AI from the field, from information from field service, definitely can help with the basis of predictive analytics. So, here's a scenario. You have technicians going in the field working on, let's say, a widget that has a common problem, but because it happens in different regions, the data is not housed in one area for someone to say, "Oh, I see a trend." Using AI as your engine or your knowledge base engine, it can search and find that information, find the uniqueness of the situation, and start to provide solutions or start to provide indicators of what could be a possible failure or lead to the failure. And in doing so, you start to create that predictive analytics. Now, if you're thinking of a field service environment, how amazing would that be if your field service would call the customer and say, "Look, I need to come into your account by next week. Looking at the data, I want to do some preemptive work to avoid failure." And they go in and literally fix the problem before it becomes a problem. I believe that's where we're going with AI outside of the fear that people have of it taking jobs. There are things that it can do that makes it more efficient, but there are also things that it can't do from the personal or the interaction with people. And I think that's where field service will gain a lot of traction using AI.
So do you think it's the silver bullet we've always been waiting for?
I think it's another tool in the toolbox.
Okay, right. We'll go back to, so do you think this is the silver bullet?
Well, one, I hear that all the time. I believe it's just another tool in the tool shed. It's just a bigger hammer to wield. The problem that people see as AI is they want it to be the silver bullet because it can do so much. It's similar to people using it in ChatGPT to write a letter. AI has the capabilities of creating a better thought. So you have an idea of what you want to do, you put it into an AI engine, and then it gives you new context and content that makes you go, oh, I didn't think about that. In doing so, seems to create a better document. No, it's giving you more to think about. Now, what you're supposed to do is take that information and rewrite what you have. And a lot of people are actually using it and saying, okay, that's it. And then you also know that if you're looking at an AI written a document that has not been reviewed or altered, it starts to show tendencies of machine learning, how it writes or how it states a issue. And this is where people are saying, it does all it needs to do, and they're not really taking it into as a tool. They're making it the answer. I believe AI, as we continue to move, it's going to do some amazing things. But if we get lazy using it, it can actually be detrimental to not just how business is done, and we're talking about from field service, but even in operations or even down to communicating with customers, because it's only as smart as the person who is implementing information or prompting information from it versus what people are saying, let me just ask a question and take that as the holy grail of answers.
Yeah, no, I think that's very wise. Everyone's just, all the technology companies are going, oh, AI, industrial AI, this type of AI. And actually, there's been quite a lot of machine learning in a lot of field service systems for quite a long time. So um, in terms of implementations and technology, either process or technology, what's made the biggest impact on your team's effectiveness in the past?
My past teams, it's been the integration of systems that work in different areas of business, but they're integrated to work together. So Salesforce.com is more for the sales side, it's not as much for service, but you have what's called ServiceNow and elements of SAP where you can create interfaces between the three to meet the needs of the service side, where the data's coming in, say from a ServiceNow perspective, data's coming in, creating the case. If it's a complaint, it could reside into SAP. But if you're working on something that affects the sales side, you can create a case or create an opportunity for sales and send that over to sales using Salesforce.com. So the integration of the systems make this work very well for business today. We're back.
We're back. I tell you, there were challenges. You know how sometimes this just happens? There were challenges on my internet
It
connection.
just happens. It just happens. It all depends on the time of day and how your internet provider is handling the bandwidth. So it does. Yeah, it happens quite a bit, to be honest.
This, unfortunately, is Elon Musk that's causing the trouble.
I
We
have
won't,
other issues,
we
so
won't talk about that. It's the best I can do, darling. Um,
not a.
let's just go back to that question again. So, is there technology or process implementations that you've done in the past that have had a major impact on your team's performance?
Yes, in my past experience, we've worked to create efficiencies by using multiple platforms and integrating those platforms to maximize the effectiveness of service and how it impacts sales. So, an example is you have SAP, you have ServiceNow, and you have Salesforce.com. And Salesforce.com is more for sales. It's a really great product. Provides a lot of data analytics in the background. You have your different dashboards. You can create your opportunities, things of that nature. From a service side, how do you get that information into Salesforce.com and create maybe the opportunity from service that opens up the sales opportunity, right? So you talk to someone on a phone call, you say, okay, well, you know what? I see you have an issue, or I see this is a great. Let me get you in contact with our sales rep. You can send a message over into Salesforce.com that identifies here's an opportunity for the sales rep. Well, those are different systems. You have to have one, the platform for bringing the call in to create maybe a case, and then how to forward or to seamlessly move that opportunity into Salesforce.com. And of course, then in that, you may have complaints, which can go into SAP in my scenario. It's the integration of systems to create efficiencies that I've seen has been the most beneficial and extremely challenging because you are talking about different platforms, and you're also talking about IT having the capability of working through these different platforms, whatever the cost is of each platform, and then also training people to work through and in these different platforms. That process takes years, not just to implement, which is a huge undertaking, but getting people to understand the importance of this efficient process that you're creating through this integration. I'm seeing more companies getting into or moving to that mindset of creating efficiencies through integration. It's just the vehicles that they're using and how they're using them to make that efficiency work. I believe from a field service perspective, the value of field service, people might see it as sometimes a cost center. I see it as a profit center, not just from the standpoint of the revenue from service that it provides. I think it's a profit center because it has the knowledge of the customer and the voice of the customer. And that is important from I would say from a competitive perspective, because you can address your customers specifically because you're in the building, you're talking with them through your field services. And in doing so, the knowledge that they're bringing back makes you a better company if you're using the data correctly. And using these integrated systems, it starts to house the key information of your customer, the frequency of purchases, the frequency of failures, the frequency of even successes. If you're shipping something and you're not even hearing from them over time, that's all due to this integrated system interacting or working with your field services and service organization. It becomes this holistic circle of, we meet the customer, we sell to the customer, we service the customer, they purchase again.
Mhm.
We do the same thing over and over again. As each time they go through this cycle, we are getting better as an organization for them, which then helps us to maintain them as customers and makes it hard for our competitors to break that bond. You want that connection to always be seamless, but you want it to be continuously improving for the customer to state, you know what, you have a great product, but I really love you because of your service also.
So talking about customers, have you seen much change in their expectations, particularly in your sector?
Yes. Well, I'm in multiple medical device sectors now, but
Yeah.
yes, the customers always are. What I'm seeing is one, they're more knowledgeable, not just of the product, but how processes are performed because we're all in the digital world. So everything works very similar. The expectation is higher because of the commercialness of service has declined. So think about it, as you call for, a help desk, you're in the queue for like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes for you to talk to someone. Maybe it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 20, right? You're just listening to the music while you're sitting in this queue. So customers have gotten to the point where they would love to get that immediate response versus going through the phone tree. But then when they get to the person, how effective is the person? When they're talking with them, are they personable? Are they knowledgeable? Can they really resolve the issue? And do they even sound like they care? Right? All of these things are now making the customer one knowledgeable, but they have a higher expectation of, I'm calling you with my problem. I want a solution, but I want you to provide the solution as, that I feel you're in it with me, right? I remember calling a call center about an issue, and one, they made it impossible for me to get to a live person, but I finally figured it out. And when I got to the person, they were so personable. I forgot I was on the phone. I was on the call for like 20 minutes waiting for them. I enjoyed the conversation. They listened to everything I stated. They went through, and at the end, they came back and said, "Did I take care of this, and this?" Like, yes. I said, "My only problem is I had to wait 20 plus minutes to talk to you. Outside of this, has been phenomenal." And they even apologized for the systems. So this person was really versed in understanding people and communicating the vision or the mission of the company because they kept reiterating the company slogans, why they're there, blah, blah, blah. That's what customers are looking for. Are they looking for perfection? No, but they are looking for someone who at least appears to have their interest at heart and is going to provide the solution. They're not going to pass it on to someone else. They're not going to say, well, that's somebody else's issue. They're going to say, I'll take it, own it, and let me resolve it. If you do that, I think you hit 99% of what a customer is looking for. Expectations of that organization raises to the next level. And you're not the common experience that their customers are going through. I always say the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is the extra. It's technically that. That's what I believe customers are looking for, because the playing field is so it's not changing. It's delivery flat until you have an organization that can do that little extra, makes them stand above the crowd.
I've heard you talk in the past, John, about the car industry and differentiation. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, you were breaking up a little bit, so if you give me that question one more time.
Okay, you talked in the past about the car industry and differentiation,
Yeah.
and just wondering whether you could potentially elaborate on that.
All right. So the current, well, if we're talking about service in the current situation, I mean, the difference between what's ordinary and extraordinary, I think that's what you're trying to state,
Yeah.
because it's breaking up a little bit. Okay. Well, I always equate service, no matter what organization you're with what experience a person you have, right? So let's talk. My example, let's say, is let's go to a restaurant. Why do we pay extra money to go to a steakhouse versus a more like large franchise, right? Why do we pay the value of the steak at one place versus another? Why do we see that this is more of a premium versus a standard? All right. So this is really what I'm trying to get to. The difference is how we handle the interaction of the service, right? If you look at the steak, it might be cooked pretty close. Yeah, you might have more higher end. It's been smoked. It's been
Mhm.
it's aged for X number in one area. But when we talk about the process of cooking the steak, it's pretty close, right? Let's just have somebody burning it, right? But the difference that one can charge more versus the other is the service, the experience, how you feel about, my value of spending X number of dollars is well worth it just to go here, because as soon as I walk in the door, I'm treated a certain way. When I sit down, I feel that the waiter or the waitress is very attentive. The food comes out as I like. The atmosphere, the ambiance meets this higher level. So I will pay the extra. So let me step back even further. That's food. Let's talk about an interesting one, because most people can understand. Disney World. I took the kids there every year, twice a year, right? Why would I pay a premium to go?
I'm back.
Okay. So my other example would be Disney. I took the kids to Disney 2 or 3 times a year. That's a very expensive vacation,
Mhm.
right? But why was it valuable? It was the experience. I mean, the overall experience, even down to how every part of the locations were, the colors, the paintings, the characters. You felt like it's a very premium product, right? So it brought that value, which made me say, let me spend my money. When we're looking at field services, it's the same thing. If we get people who are really people focused, who understand the extra is, oh, how are you doing? Let me see what else is going on. They're knowledgeable more than one product. So, hey, I have this issue here, but do you know anything about that? They go, oh, yeah, I can take care of that. They are creating that value proposition beyond the product. And I always tell the service organizations that I've led is that you are the next face of the company outside of what sales has provided. Sales sells the product, gets the customer really involved in, hey, I want to be part of this product line. But the next person they normally talk to is the service organization. And if a service organization creates that premium feel, one, they're listening. Two, they're providing solutions. Three, they're asking more questions to see if there's additional work or help that they can provide. Four, they provide resources. Hey, do you know about our website? Here's additional information. I'll send you a text if you like. And 5, at the end, they're asking, is there anything else I can provide? Did I cover everything that you're looking for? And the customer's like, yes, this is great. You're creating this value just through that interaction. Then you add your field service. When they're going in, they're dressed to impress. They're not coming in sloppy. They're speaking to individuals as a pleasure to be here versus I'm just taking care of a task. So it's the whole, interaction with the organization, service organization, that starts to create the value proposition for an organization outside of the quality of the product. It's the overall experience. And that's the difference between an ordinary service organization and an extraordinary service organization.
Fascinating. What do you think, John, the service industry will look like in about 5 years' time? Do you think we're going to see many changes?
I believe this is a good question because a lot of people are starting to be concerned about that. I believe AI is going to play a bigger role. I think on the call center side, I was in the process of implementing a new call center in one of my locations. And as we're talking to vendors, they're really promoting the AI side of it. So I think that is going to occur. I believe from a field service perspective, you still have to have the people in the field. You have to have them face to face. But what I believe in 5 years is they're going to be more knowledgeable and they're going to have more data. They're going to be, it's going to, they'll be, they'll have data that's accessible to them that they don't have currently. What I mean by that is using AI, if there's a specific issue, AI will provide the solution and it'll give 2 or 3 prompts to maybe ask questions or provide additional assistance to the customer. So now it almost is going to sound like and look like a script where you're getting the information and then it'll tell you, oh, you have 2 other options you can provide. And a savvy field service person will start to understand that and then speak to it to a customer. I also believe that because of our technology changes, you're going to see more work with bots. As a communication perspective, where people are calling in, instead of calling in, they're doing the chat bot because that gives them the option to get away from the call. But then that has to improve also because it's still very, I don't know, clinical, I would say. It's generic. It depends on who you're talking with. I always know when the person is working with 3 different calls or more because how the delay, how they're responding to me. And because I understand the systems, I'm looking at, okay, who's really doing a great job with the chat. I have not run into an organization that's really made that ideal for someone who understands what goes on in the background. I think the timing has improved, but you also know it's a script, right, that they use to open the conversation. And what I always do in mine is I'll say something that allows a person to answer as a person and not just give me the checklist of information. And when you do that, you start to get additional information. Sometimes that can help you figure out what the problem is, especially if you're knowledgeable enough to kind of just point me into the right direction versus needing the entire assistance. So I do see those as some of the things that are coming in the next few years. It's all going to be linked to AI. It's just how we use that to improve the way we talk. And I'll say this too, and I've seen this, it's really great for international companies because the person who is not, English is not their primary language. Using AI to do the translation will help that communication. I've seen that already.
So, what are your goals for the next, say, 24 months, John? Either professionally or personally? You're going to go back to being a DJ?
No, no, no. Those days are over with. So no, no. I'm working with, at W&H, I'm working with a phenomenal service organization here in North America, and we're just trying to build it out to meet what we see are our current needs and then also, of course, our future needs. So a lot of what I'm talking about, I'm actually in the process of doing it. Integrating systems that we create more efficiencies and get people to understand the importance of, you know, service is a very fluid, I would say, environment. It's not task driven, it's solution driven. And solutions come from all over. And then how do we house this information, use this data to be that preemptive service organization in the future? So next few years is really building it out, helping to influence a global view of service for the company. And in doing so, just really doing a phenomenal job of having outstanding service with our customers. I love to work with the voice of the customer. I love to travel to sites, sit and talk with people, hear their issues. I've done this in my past. And you learn so much from how people use your devices. There's design that comes from R&D, and then there's design that happens in the field, right? And sometimes the two do not match, and you start to wonder, why are we seeing this particular problem? Is because the customer is using it in a different way than it was actually thought of being used. They found a different way to alter maybe how it functions. And in doing so, it starts to create failures that we think are quality issues, but it may be because of how it's being used. And then having those relationships with customers, that goes back to my extraordinary piece. How many organizations have a senior director or VP traveling to accounts just to say, hello, here to understand how you're working with our product. Tell me what you like about our service. And they know this person is listening and taking this information back. It's rare now because everyone's trying to get things done.
Yep.
I still believe there's time for that, and I believe there should be purpose for that. But that's the outlier, right? Because everyone's going to say, "Why do we need this?" That customer's voice is critical, especially when you're trying to develop your organization moving into the future. Status quo is not going to be successful moving in the future. It's like looking at leaders. The big trend now is moving leaders from being transactional to being transformational. Or people leaders. That's another way people looking at it. Even trained in the colleges here in the United States, versions of it. It's because what has happened in the past is not going to meet the needs of the future. The other thing that we're working on that I worked on that I think is important is understanding and leading generational organizations. Right now, we have 4 different generations that we're working with. You have your baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, Gen Zers, right? Each one has a different way of working. Leaders now have to understand, if I'm speaking to a baby boomer, there's specific things that a baby boomer wants to hear versus what a Gen X or Gen Z or millennial wants. So now it's more of a challenge now for leaders to be successful to move forward. So that's also part of my next few or 3 or 4 or 5 years is making sure as I'm bringing leaders on, we're addressing that generational need so that
Mhm.
we can be successful. So it makes it seems like it makes it more complex, but it actually makes it more interesting. We're creating solutions. So it's not a challenge. It's just how do we create the solutions to make, the organization more successful through the people that are being built, developed for leadership, but also how we're executing with our customers and getting the voice of the customer.
It's fascinating. So, John, just to finish off, if you had a magic wand and you could solve one field service challenge, what would it be?
A magic wand would be getting people in the field to understand how important they are to the success of an organization. That once you get the position, that you play a integral part in success of services. And service is a requirement, is not an offshoot of business. It is a requirement for the success of any organization. Getting people to understand that day one, living it day 365 and beyond, yeah, that would be fantastic. Everyone I would bring on have that mindset. I know immediately that my service organization would improve to levels that, probably are not even charted. It would just be a total customer experience paradigm shift. And you would see it resonate throughout the whole organization because now you're getting that person who's dealing with the customer's bragging about the interactions. Guess what? Your salesperson goes back to sell something, a new product, a new technology. Customer's going to want to purchase it because their experience has been phenomenal. And you start to see revenue grow from that one, I would say, aspect of interaction is making the field service people focused on being the person that changes the perception of how the customer sees the product, also the company, and then also what service looks like.
That's great. Thank you, John, very much for your time. It's
Oh,
been
thank you.
absolutely
I
fascinating.
appreciate it. Yes, it was great.